wasn't, we didn't get skunked, but just not excessive. I've never been skunked, which I think is the coolest thing, like for a whale viewing boat, like ever. Into the river? No. Further out, you'd have the orcas out in the Arctic and the what's the other whale out with the orcas and the belugas? Further out, like northern. Thank you, bowhead whale. Yeah. I think Kyron saw one here before, but I never have. Well, they're out in the bay. Okay, yay, the underwater's live. Okay, roger that. I'm just gonna go on the mic for a sec. I'm live on the mic already. Hi, Beluga buddies. As you may have just heard, we have spotted some whales. As per Casey and I had a good discussion yesterday, I think we shared with the team, our intention is to go up the river today to see if we can find a little bit of a feeding frenzy or even just a larger little pod. The last couple days we've checked the bay and been closer to the mouth of the river. So today we are heading south, aka up the river, in search of those larger pods. So thank you for bearing with us. It sounds like our underwater camera is now live and our above deck is live. And as noted by being still, we are not being still. It is a little bit of some rougher water. We've got the wind creating some waves that are coming at us from the side of the boat. So it's a little bit rocky for us here, but we're doing okay. Very lucky that they're not bigger waves. But they are just a little bit of a white cap on the top, which is making it challenging for us to spot those whales. So we've got all 8 of our eyes peeled. I've got a good team on the lookout. And like I said, hopefully we're going to find a larger group of whales as we travel up the river. So thanks for bearing with us while we get there. And other highlights that we can expect to see today. The ship finally arrived at the port. So it is like a cargo ship. I was speaking of this a couple days ago when the tugboat was out. And I was actually thinking that this boat was going to arrive a few days ago. But apparently they showed up a few days late because of whatever might have happened out in the bay as it was making its way here. But it is dropping off precious cargo not only for Churchill but also those northern communities that so desperately wait for those goods. So probably near the end of the tour, when we get closer back towards the port, we'll get some of the camera feed on that ship. It's kind of one of those neat ones that has its own built-in cranes to like unload the sea cans. And in other exciting news, we should see Captain Kyron out on the water today. If he comes to join us, he is operating the Zodiac today with a couple very special Polar Bears International guests. So hopefully we'll bump into them and get him on the camera. I know it's always good to see Kyron out on the water, and it's very nice for us to be able to put both of the boats out. So some things to look forward to today other than the beluga whales. Thanks again for joining us, guys. And again, we appreciate those comments on the message board. We do read them, and should you have any questions, we'll try to get them answered. Hello, friends. I thought that while we were making our way upriver and trying to spot our beluga buddies, I'd take this opportunity to welcome back Cassandra. My favorite polar bear international staff scientist is visiting us from Winnipeg. So for those of you that have not met Cassandra before, she is a beloved professor at the University of Manitoba, educating budding young minds about all things science. And correct me if I'm wrong, Cassandra, weren't you voted favorite professor by the students last year? Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Tara.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be back. As Tara mentioned, I work with Polar Bears International in a variety of capacities, one of which I come in the summer to help run our Churchill Youth Summer Camp, and we're kicking that off in the next couple of weeks. But one of the reasons why Churchill is a place that I frequently visit is this is an area where I have done my graduate research. So about a decade ago, I started working with Polar Bears International, doing a citizen science project from the tundra buggies during the fall polar bear migratory season. And now in the summer, when I come up for Polar Bears International as an ambassador in our Polar Bears International house, I share a lot of information from my doctoral research, again in this area, but focusing on ring seal diet and how it shifted over the last 20 years here in Hudson Bay. And ring seals are super, super important to this area and to Polar Bears International because they are polar bears' favorite food. They have a lot of blubber on their body, and that is what the polar bears love to consume and get fat off of. And that's why they are able to survive throughout the summer period. They'll just use all of the fat that they've consumed from the ring seals that's on their body as they wait for the sea ice to form again in the fall.
It's actually been something super cool that Polar Bears International has done this year at the Polar Bears International House. We got that, like this giant life-size ring seal, and personally I had no idea how big and beautiful, I might add, that they are. And now we're using it as a tool to demonstrate the layers of blubber. So there's actually this insert piece that comes out, and there's like so much. How much blubber is it? It's like 6 inches of blubber or something?
I was just going to say, I would say about 6 inches of blubber, and typically on a ring seal's body, if we account for the skin and the blubber, that's about 75 to 90% of its body weight. So that's just a huge amount of their body mass that polar bears consume.
Awesome. So we're so happy to have you back. Maybe we'll just, if you could speak a little bit, because we're not going to see you here next week. So what are you actually here to do this summer?
Sure. So next week we are going to kick off our first week of summer camp with the local youth in town. So we run 2 weeks of programming where we work to empower and motivate the youth here in Churchill about the special area where they live, and we have programs planned for them to explore the land with a couple elders from town and some bear monitors, of course, so that we're safe. And we also do lots of science-based activities, and we'll learn different things about the food web. And we base most of the activities out of the Polar Bears International Interpretive Center house that we have. And then, of course, weather cooperating, which it's looking to be a nice week. We'll be outside as much as possible, near the water, watching the whales, hopefully spotting some seals, maybe even seeing a bear. Of course, safely.
Ooh, bear. Hopefully, yeah, because I think last year, so this is the second year that PBI has been doing these kids camps, right?
Yes, this is our second year.
Yeah, and last year I know you took all the kids out to the Ithaca.
Yes,
and
we did.
Yeah, so yesterday one of our cam operators was kind enough to post a whole link to the Ithaca. So if you weren't with us yesterday, you can scroll down the message board and read a little bit about that. It's kind of a cool story, but never know, because 2 or 3 days ago, Casey was at the Ithaca, and that's where they saw a bear swimming into shore. So hence why the bear guards obviously
are required.
Yeah.
Very, very important personnel to come with us.
And this year, what was the change with the kids camp? Because a lot of our moderators and cam ops have been with us for a couple years now. So I think the team will remember the kids coming out in the Zodiacs and waving, and it was really fun. They caught pictures of them on the camera.
Yeah. So last year, being our first camp, we took advantage of the summer season and getting the youth out on our Zodiac and touring the Beluga boat and learning a little bit about the science communications that we do with explore.org and having the Beluga cams. This year, so that we can mix it up for them, we are going to actually go on a full-day tundra buggy adventure.
A full day?
Full day. We're going to take 25-year-olds on a tundra buggy.
Good for you guys. Bless your hearts. That's going to be a hoot.
They'll have a bingo card so that try to spot all the main Churchill wildlife and leaving some blank spaces for things that we might not anticipate seeing, but might be able to get a glimpse of.
What kind of stuff are you putting on that bingo card? Like bear, caribou,
bear.
Awesome.
We have two kinds of bear. We have the black bear and the polar bear on that bingo card.
Ooh, that would be a treat.
Over the last few years, they have seen polar bear, grizzly, and black bears here in Churchill.
Yeah, very rarely, of course, but still, what a magical experience.
Possible. There's lots of different birds.
What about wolves?
Oh, wolf is not on there.
They spotted 3 last year.
That's true. That is true.
Should you have a blank space,
fill it with a wolf.
Yeah, a wolf. That's why I think you should put it on.
I believe a seal is also on there because, of course, seals are near and dear to my heart, so we might be able to see them. The tundra buggy does drive along coastal trails as well, so you can get glimpses of those marine mammals.
Awesome.
This year is quite different, though, from last year, where just the other day, a lot of the sea ice was here in the river. I'm sure you've chatted a little bit about that.
We're trying to celebrate Arctic Sea Ice Week.
Yeah.
Because Arctic...
And the sea ice was actually here this week.
Sea Ice Day was a bust, so we're going with week. So far, I'm 2 out of 3, but I feel like I'm not going to get it today. But please, carry on.
Well, the last report that we just received, too, is that the bay in this area, I believe, is still 30% coverage of sea ice.
Oh, wow.
And so that's looking to be one of the 9th latest, this is a weird statistic to say, breakup. So this is good news for the bears.
9th latest? Oh, that's great news.
Whereas last year they came off a little bit earlier. And, of course, with that, then that's why we often see a little bit more curious bears in town earlier in the summer or more frequently throughout the summer. This summer so far has been a little bit more quiet.
Very minimal for town, which is really nice for enjoying the longer days and feeling a little bit safer, certainly.
And one of the things that I love about sea ice, if I may, is just how variable it is. But with climate change, what's happening is the variability from each year is changing so much, where we know that there is a pattern of decline, but we can have a really what we call good sea ice year, and then the next year might be one of the worst sea ice years, and then we might get another good sea ice year.
Well, and Stefan was saying yesterday how oddly it's behaving, and again, our moderators are sharing all kinds of link about the sea ice, but he was showing us, I think it's the NASA pictures.
Yes.
Noting that these sea ice is actually like still really like in the middle of the Hudson Bay versus like by now it's usually only showing up on the south.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's...
odd patterns of breakup.
Well, and that could impact, we were discussing, are the bears going to stay on the ice and float along and, jump off where they can like they're riding the bus? Or are they going to... get off early and make a swim to come back to, like, let's say Churchill or Wapusk or wherever they're from. Or are they just going to ride that ice as long as they can and maybe make landfall somewhere new? No one knows. But yeah, please carry on. Your favorite thing about sea ice, it's very variable, changes.
It can change. And then one of the things that we actually are going to do with the camp next week is just show them how important sea ice is as a home. So our camp theme is what is a home, and that can mean a lot of different things. And of course, a home is different for all these different animals, but one of my favorite organisms in the Arctic are the microscopic, teeny tiny ice algae, and they live in the sea ice. The sea ice is quite porous or sponge-like, where because of the salt, it gets pushed out as the sea ice forms or freezes, and this creates these little channels. And without these channels, there would not be a home for the sea ice algae. And the sea ice algae is what makes the Arctic go around. Sea ice algae photosynthesize, as do other plants. But what's so unique about sea ice algae is when they photosynthesize, they actually synthesize lipids. And so these are carbon and hydrogen molecules that are full of lots and lots of energy, and that is what gets put into ring seal blubber or beluga blubber.
Hold on. I have a question.
Okay.
The lipids is the sea algae or the lipids?
The lipids are made by sea algae.
Oh, okay, so it's after, like the diatoms are after the algae, right?
Diatoms are another kind of sea ice algae.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
They're all grouped as these microscopic organisms that will live in the sea ice. And so if we think back to our textbook biology, as Tara mentioned, I do teach introductory biology at the University of Manitoba.
So we're all learning together. We're getting a free education here, folks.
We talk about photosynthesis because it's a very important life process. But we usually learn about it from a land plant perspective, where they photosynthesize and produce sugars or carbohydrates. So in the sea ice, it is that sea ice algae or some of these diatoms, and they're synthesizing the lipids that then get eaten by small zooplankton, then different fish, and then the ring seals, then the whales, and then of course up to the polar bears or apex predators. And so without that sea ice, we wouldn't have a place for all of those lipids to really grow. So we often say that the sea ice to the Arctic is just as important as soil is to a forest. So the sea ice is, in fact, more than a platform, it's a biological home.
Oh, wow. Jeez. This is why I like having Cass around, because it is, it seems like a complicated process, but when you can break it down and simplify the words and just kind of see it as a circle that like essentially just continues to feed and help itself, it's a little bit easier to understand. So that's one of the main things Polar Bear International, like education and outreach, is doing, is really trying to find simple ways to talk about and explain these things, and then make that part of like a daily conversation, make it something children can understand, and even your average adult who may be intimidated by, the science of it all and the official words. So
anyone can be a scientist.
we appreciate you breaking it down.
Really, I often tell the summer camp kids as well, if you have a question about what you're seeing, you're being a scientist. That is the first step.
Yeah, the research of it all. We always hear, we're very blessed to have people with doctorates and PhDs join us all the time, and the number one thing they say is, that's a great question. We don't know. That's facilitating our research. These are things we're looking for. So if any of you viewers out there do have some questions, like I said, Cassandra does teach this introductory science, and she's definitely happy to share some of her knowledge and information with us. So thank you so much, Cassandra. I'll give you a little bit of a break, and we're starting to see a little bit more whales in the area. So let's get all our eyes back on that, and we'll try to get them on the camera. Looks like we have made the right decision heading up this way, and we've got some friends coming up on that on deck cam right at the boat, so hopefully they'll make an appearance the underwater camera as well. Yay! Hello, Beluga friends! Looks like we've had some interaction on that underwater camera, and we've got just a ton of whales around us right now. And if you haven't already heard, that underwater camera should be broadcasting a lot of really amazing whale sounds. I can hear them echoing through our aluminum boat here, and they have been quite vocal. So hopefully you guys are catching all that. I don't know how much they're coming up to that camera right now, but there's certainly a lot of feeding behavior happening right around the boat. So yeah, for our cam operators, if you're not seeing those whales directly behind, do feel free to do a pan, because they are just left, right, and center. some interesting observations we've made today while we're just surrounded by these feeding pods that we have found, which is wonderful. But I'm just being really mindful of our location and our depth. So funny, a lot of this beluga activity is happening in less than 6 feet of water. So for safety's sake, we like to keep Delphi in, 10 is a nice comfortable depth for Delphi. Certainly she can go a little bit shallow, but we really, really start to watch that as that number drops. But just with the waves pushing the boat too, what we were seeing, a lot of that whale action was happening in less than 6 feet of water. So I think that's why we were seeing so many of those humps, like just because they're actually not having to dive that deep down to get the capelin when it's that shallow. So a lot of up, down, up, down, up, down as they chase them. So that was kind of interesting because a lot of times when we see the whales further up the river towards the bay, we're looking at like 10 to 15 feet of water. So I thought that was just interesting behavior today. Hello, friends. I just was scrolling through the message board there, and it looks like we have a question that I'm going to go ahead and pass off to Cassandra about our algae sea ice. Oh, and I just refreshed here, so I lost it. Bear with me because I'd like to read it verbatim. I'll just let Cassandra get on her mic. Oh, dear. I lost it. Okay. Can one of my moderators refresh that question for me? I apologize, I lost it, and it sounds like a really awesome question about sea ice algae, so I want to make sure we address it. Please and thank you. Okay, folks, I made a quick turn and I have found the question from Kamop Sonata, our best question asker. So here we go, Cassandra. If your mic's on, the question is: does sea ice algae help control the overgrowth of other types of algae? As we have less and less sea ice, are there any ideas to somehow farm sea ice algae and then reintroduce it into Arctic waters?
That is a really awesome question. So there's actually two types of algae that grows in Arctic waters, and some of the research that I conducted for ring seal diet actually tried to look at how much or the proportions of their diet came from sea ice algae versus the algae that's in the pelagic area of the water, or phytoplankton. So we have phytoplankton in the Arctic waters, the same kind of algae blooms that you might have in lakes. And this isn't necessarily all bad because this is, again, nutrients that are fueling the waters. But they do produce different types of lipids that we can track through the food web, different enough from the sea ice algae living in the sea ice. And we actually can trace back proportions of predator diets to what we call the sympagic algae, which is that algae that's growing in the sea ice, versus the pelagic phytoplankton. Yes, with decreasing sea ice, we are seeing shifts in the sympagic algae in the diets of ring seals, particularly here in Hudson Bay, although further research will be taken here because it's a newer technique. For a long time, a lot of us interested in diet would use things like stable isotopes, where we can measure carbon and nitrogen, maybe even oxygen and sulfur in the tissues of these predators to get an idea of what they're eating. We can also use something called fatty acid analysis, which will look at the unique fatty acids in the fat of these predators, which of course we know do come from the sea ice algae and the phytoplankton here in the Arctic waters. And then one step further, there's new techniques that have just been established over the last 10 years or so that can quantify how much nutrients are coming from that sympagic zone. So it's a really interesting question, and we don't really have an answer to that, but we do know that there are some trends with the decline in sea ice that we're seeing a decline in some sympagic algae in some predators, but not all. And so we're starting to tease apart these patterns to understand the transfer of nutrients throughout the Arctic food web.
That is a mouthful, Cassandra, and thank you for breaking that down. I would just also add that, you know, everything starts with the sea ice and the algae, and, you know, our viewers obviously hear us talk about this a lot, so have some ideas. But even if we're able to reintroduce sea ice algae to help with the diatoms and the photoplankton and that beginning of that, you know, earthly cycle, if you will, with the decline of sea ice, that's still going to have a dramatic impact for the seal and then polar bear population, regardless of the algae. So it's kind of like, I don't know if we can necessarily think of the sea algae separate from the sea ice as a potential solution.
Correct.
Okay. And Casey is doing some sciencing off the back here, but maybe Cassandra and I can address this question from Sugar G Mom. She's wondering if there's ever been any deformed belugas that are known, and if so, have they survived? She says, I know it happens in the animal kingdom, and recently, where she's from, there has been a dog born with 6 legs. So what I know about deformed belugas, which, you know, isn't much, and basically all I've heard from Casey, is that, yes, this is possible, but they're not even quite sure if it's a deformity. I know they've seen some different shapes of melon and some different facial structure that kind of seems to go away from the normal beluga. I think they're not sure if it's best to call that a deformity, but I don't know of anything wild and wacky like a third fin or an extra bump on a tail or anything. Casey's shaking her head a little bit, like I don't think so either, but we'll hit her with that answer about deformed belugas. Casey, what do you got?
It's a really, really great question. So short answer is probably not. I probably haven't seen any myself. I don't recall seeing any in other populations, but that doesn't mean they don't exist for sure. I will say in the population I study for my PhD thesis, we do sometimes see curves in the dorsal ridge, but we're not sure if that's kind of an injury that has healed that way or if they were born kind of with that defect. I know in other marine mammals sometimes we do see curves in the spine like that. So yeah, I think in belugas it's maybe not as common. Yeah, definitely haven't seen extra fins or flukes. That would be memorable for sure.
Yeah, nothing completely wild, but just some things that we're unsure if are just, you know, a little bit not completely formed or something along those lines, right?
Yeah. Yesterday we did see one with kind of an enlarged melon, it looked like, and maybe even a little bit behind the melon area too. And we were just kind of trying to CSI figure out what was going on with that whale. If it might be kind of an infection and that's making the skin swell up or something similar, or yeah, maybe just a deformity. So hopefully we'll get more pictures of some of these whales that you have questions about.
Yeah, I know a lot of the stuff that I noticed is different last year when we were out with Stefan. It was really curious for me to find that he would say, oh, that looks like a scar that's been healed, or like you said, an infection, because I remember I saw one that kind of had like these 3 dots. They almost looked like they were so perfect they looked like tagging, and he was saying that was actually kind of like a beluga owie, like it was a little bit of an infection, and that's just the way it presents. So I don't know, really neat, but usually, you know, you guys have sort of identified those kind of like abnormalities in the past.
Yeah, I know some of the viruses and some of the infections can cause, it almost looks like tattoos on the whales.
Yeah, that's a good description.
Yeah, and so we know from other populations that those aren't actually going to be permanent, but I think on the resighting that we have of one called Morse, like Morse code, those were prevalent still after 5 years. So we're kind of tracking, hoping to see that whale again and see if those kind of slowly fade away or if they're just gone altogether 1 year.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Casey. That's a just solid answer. We appreciate you. I noticed Cloud also posted an awesome video from Polar Bears International on the message board that we have posted with our website about the sea ice and algae. So thank you, Cloud, for finding that link and sharing it. It is a short video, so do feel free to watch that at your leisure. And yeah, and then we're just going to take a hot minute to celebrate Casey again, who, I don't know if you guys caught it, but submitted her PhD paper. Hooray! Congratulations, Casey. We're all very proud of you for sticking it out. And good luck on the review process.
Thank you so much. I'll keep you posted.
Roger that, boss. Okay, there you have it, folks. If you have any more questions, we do monitor that board, so don't be shy to post them because we are just full of knowledgeable people on the boat this week, and I learned something every time you guys ask a question. So keep them coming. Thank you. Hello, Beluga friends. I think we've made the executive decision as the boat here. We're gonna head a little bit more north towards the bay. We've kind of spent our time in the river here, but we have noticed that the whales kind of seem to have quieted down a little bit. And we know that our friend Captain Kyron is on the water, and he has yet to join us down here. So we wonder if maybe he's seeing something exciting a little bit closer to the bay. So bear with us as we make our way north back towards the port. And then once we get there, you know, we'll be on the lookout, and maybe our cam ops can help us pan over, and we'll have a look at that cargo ship or a material ship that has showed up and is being unloaded for the good people of Churchill and the other northern communities in Canada. We are making just a little bit of slow progress with the waves. I can tell from the on-deck cam that it feels a little different than it looks. Looks pretty calm on that on-deck cam, but it is actually rocking us a little bit because the waves are hitting us right on our broadside. So we're just gonna go nice and slow up the river, and hopefully we'll catch some beluga buddies on the way. Once again, thanks for joining us. Hey folks, while we're making our way up the river here, I can see that Cloud has been very busy posting some awesome links from Polar Bears International, not only about the Arctic food chain and the way that ecosystem works, but looks like there's a great article there on sea ice algae, and then a couple pics of Morris, the beluga we were talking about. So have a look at those links while we're making our way north. That is a ton of good information. We super appreciate you sharing those, Cloud. Thanks so much. Hello, Beluga buddies. Thank you for bearing with us. That was a long haul to get back up to the port. Delphi is moving a little bit slower with 4 people, but just really pushing through those waves. So it did take us a hot minute to get up here, so thanks for sticking it out with us. Hopefully you enjoyed that beautiful sunset and light reflection on the water. That sure did look pretty. So we're just pulling up here to the end of the port where we're going to drive by the tugboat, which, like we said, we saw earlier this week out on the water escorting the ship. So as we travel up the port, we'll end up putting that cargo ship in the view of the on-deck cam as we get further up there. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And if you do happen to see the right angle, the H.M. Wilson tugboat has got a little extension off its nose, and we were commenting that it kind of looks like a boaty narwhal. So we had a good chuckle about that. Of course, it is not having any attachments off the bow. It was just the vantage point. But yeah, I'll see if we can't get the name of this ship that has since landed, and then keep your eyes peeled for those built-in cranes that they use to take all the sea cans off. Okay, we're just pulling up here beside this large cargo ship. Oh, thank you. Hi, folks. Just pulling up next to that big cargo ship. So if you can see off the back near that orange kind of pillar, we saw a life raft that deploys into the water. I don't know if you might be able to see that. Might do another drive-by, and you can look for it. And then we can see the cargo and the 3 cranes. So you'll see sea cans in the colors of blue and red. And then you'll also see a couple very large, almost Coast Guard looking type boats. And then near the far end, just some more like fishing style boats. So if you could see behind the fishing style boats, you'd probably catch some cars. So we often see a whole bunch of sea cans on these boats, and then oftentimes a lot of vehicles, because you can, you can get a vehicle to Churchill only on the train or by cargo ship. So a lot of those vehicles are for not only this town, but again, some of those more northern communities. And sometimes we even see boats as being shipped on the large cargo ship, a boat that's big enough to take a vehicle with them as they travel north. So people are always wondering what kind of stuff comes up. A quick short answer is large items. So hopefully you can see that in the camera now. If we don't see any whales as we continue towards the bay, we'll probably turn back around and then we can get another view of it. Hey friends, we're just doing another sweep on that cargo vessel, and if we're timing it properly, actually, we're gonna see a crane in action here. Looks like the middle crane is just starting to lift a load, so not sure if we'll be able to see that because it looks like now there's a wall in the way. But kind of neat just to see him in action. We're just gonna do one quick loop at the stern. I thought I'd let you guys have a quick look at that. And then things seem to have calmed down. We're hoping it's not an illusion and the port is just blocking all the wind and waves. But things are getting a little bit nicer out here in terms of conditions for us. So we'll see if we can't get a little bit closer to the mouth of the river and check out the Beluga action there. Okay, so I'm going to actually get Casey to help me out with this pronunciation of the boat. Kamutik? Kamatik. Okay, so we didn't know, we're not exactly sure how to pronounce the Q without the U, but we're going to go with Kamatik. And crazy, it's from Montreal. So you can see that on the stern of the boat, always the name and the location that the boat is registered. So we see that Canadian flag. And if you're wondering what that orange kind of bullet thing is, that is a deployable life raft. So if they ever had an emergency, the crew would go in that. It would shoot in the water. And they are air and water tight. So that's the back of the boat there. I went to get you some more stats on it from my marine boat app, but it was just described as vessel. So we're lucky we just got it as a cargo ship. And I do see on my marine traffic app another boat in the Hudson Bay. So maybe I'll do some poking around and figure out if that boat is also coming into the Port of Churchill, because it would be wild and exciting if we had two boats here the same week. thank you, Cloud, for that awesome link with the boat information. Um, it's good to know that kind of stuff. It's weird to see the numbers written down and then you kind of drive by it and you're like, dang, like these boats are the size of football fields. Thank you guys for sharing, and looks like everybody got some good photos of that too. Oh, and it also looks like Cloud said another ship was anchored off Hudson Bay shores this morning with the Canadian Coast Guard. I believe, oh, no, that's a beautiful picture. Thanks very much for sharing those. Appreciate the behind the scenes research from some of our moderators and cam ops. Thanks so much, guys. I know it's kind of slowed down with the whales here. I think what we've determined is that they do have a nice little spot that they enjoy further upriver there. So we'll see about the next day or two, just trying to make our way there right from the get-go at the start of the tour. And hopefully without the windy conditions, we'll be able to stick it out there a bit longer. I guess we've only got one more day on the boat this week, so that's tomorrow, where we will be hitting the water here at 5:30 Central Time here in Manitoba, and on the water, as everyone knows, till 8 p.m. We don't go out longer than we don't go out past 8 p.m. at night or before 8 a.m. in the morning. So tomorrow's tour will be a little bit shorter, as we're just getting off the water at that time for safety's sake and daylight and whatnot. So a little bit shorter tomorrow, and then all week next week, if you are planning to join us then, our tours are going to be first thing in the morning. So we'll be on the water 8 a.m. Central Time here in Manitoba. So for anybody that's a little bit more West Coast compared to us in this Central Time Zone, it's going to be pretty early for you, so you might want to plan to catch some highlights. But for anybody on the East Coast, you won't have to stay up as late this time. So just remember, next week is going to be early, and we'll finish off with a nice little sunset tour tomorrow night. About half an hour left for us on this tour now, so I think just based on the conditions, we'll try to avoid pushing into some waves that we're seeing from the bay, and we'll stick in the calm waters of the port, and hopefully some belugas are thinking the same thing as we are. Hello, friends. We are winding down to the last 20 minutes or so of our tour here. Thanks again, Cloud, for posting the information on that Coast Guard ship. That's awesome. I did just catch that you had a question, too. Do you think the noise from the ship in the river is affecting the whales and their behavior today? So I'm definitely going to pass this question off to our resident beluga expert, Casey. But I'll just add before that as we're passing by the ship, it's not like the ship itself is running. So like the motors, the propulsion motors for that ship are not running while it's at dock. I think you guys heard me touch on the fact that the crane was operating, and there's definitely probably some crew living on the boat, so like systems within the boat are running, but not the actual like loud propulsion motors that cargo ships use to cross oceans. So just wanting to clarify that we're talking about not that version of the noise, because I think we know from shipping and being on the west coast that we ask these cargo ships to slow down when they come into port, at least in Vancouver, for the humpbacks and residing orcas in the area. That's a thing that large ships are supposed to do. I believe it's related to noise and not just strikes. But again, I'll pass it off to Casey. What do you think about that ship in particular affecting beluga whale behavior, and maybe just a little bit on ships in general affecting whales, if you may?
Yeah, absolutely. So with this ship, like Tara said, so it's not running right now, so we wouldn't expect kind of avoidance behaviors from the whales. It could be, if they're less used to shipping, it might have freaked them out a little bit when it came in. But I think we would expect them to be back to normal by now. But in other areas of the world, the belugas definitely have to contend with ships and boats a lot more than they do here. So yeah, it's hard to say if those whales are more used to it. We definitely high avoidance to ships still, even in those areas where they can't really avoid them all well. And we obviously know that it does mask a lot of their acoustic signals, which is not great for beluga whales who live in darkness for 24 hours a day in the winter, and often can't see each other all that well.
Oh, that's such a great point. That's something I don't feel like we talk about enough. They're masking their sounds.
Yeah.
So it's not that the noise is necessarily affecting them, but it's not allowing them to communicate amongst each other. Oh, that's such a great point. I didn't know that.
And navigating their environment and catching food and all these things that they rely on.
The sonar effect. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
We can't even really comprehend that because
I know.
we don't use the sound in the same way. Yeah, so it's hard to say if it would still be affecting them, but I'd like to say no. The only thing I can compare it to is when predators come into the area. Sometimes we see the effects of that for days after.
Oh.
But I think that's a stronger response than we would see to something like a ship.
When you say predators, do you mean like the orcas,
Yes.
or other potential predators, if that's humans or whatever, depending on where you're at? But so like they'll flee the area if the orcas come, or try to find a hiding spot orcas can't go to?
Yeah. So a lot of times they go to shallow water and kind of form groups in the shallow water. We think it's because the killer whales will have a harder time finding them in the shallow water because they're also using echolocation. So they're kind of getting feedback from the shore. So they can't really tell when there's a lot of whales along the shore. And also, killer whales are a lot less maneuverable than belugas. So as we've seen throughout this tour, belugas are in really shallow water that killer whales definitely could not get to without being stranded.
And that's, I think we've talked about it on our broadcast here before, is that the estuary with the calves and the birthing, and it is a form of protection and a safe place where they can just sort of like be free for the season before heading out with their young ones, right?
Definitely, yeah. A little nursery ground. The water might be a little bit warmer, especially than their winter habitat, that's for sure.
Oh, heck yeah.
And
neat.
Good food and, yeah, safe from predators.
Cool.
It's a good spot.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Casey. I don't know if we'll have any more time for questions today. We are just rounding out the end of our broadcast today, gang. By the time we start maneuvering towards the port, I believe that we will have a little bit more focus on docking our boats. So thank you so much for those questions today. Just saying goodbye to Sugar G Mom. Thanks for tuning in, and hope everything goes well for you. And hopefully we will catch you, if not tomorrow, next week. As always, I want to thank Polar Bears International and Explore.org for providing us with the opportunity to be out on the boat. Never a bad day on the boat, never a bad day on the water. We still got some really good beluga interaction at the beginning, so I feel like layering up and braving the cold was definitely worth it for us. Plus, really kind of cool for you guys to see that boat that finally arrived. I was waiting desperately for it to show up because I talked about it for 2 days. As always, thank you to our cam operators and everybody behind the scenes. It's taking those snapshots and moving the camera in the right location as described by us. It is greatly appreciated, and you guys are doing an awesome job out there. Thanks to all our viewers and those of you participating in the Beluga Bits Citizen Science Project. That data is absolutely changed the game for beluga whale researchers. So I know everybody at the Assiniboia Park Zoo is super grateful. So keep it up. Look out for more citizen science projects in the future if you can. And like I said, please join me tomorrow. It'll be Friday, our last day on the week, and that's at 5:30 Central Manitoba time until 8 p.m. Central Manitoba time. So join me then, and we'll see what kind of magical and educational guests we have, and we'll try to, as always, stump them with our questions. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good night.